I should point out to all the viewers, all the listeners, it's dinner time for me. It's not for you.
You didn't have to say that. Now you make me look like an alcoholic on the channel. Hey Baron, welcome to A Glass of Marketing and thank you for accepting the invite. The concept is pretty simple here. We usually have a glass and we talk about marketing, of course, personal and professional growth. But before getting started, what are you drinking today?
This is a Riesling from the Adelaide Hills, which is just 10 minutes, very steep drive from where I am now. So it's a high altitude, cool climate. We've had a lot of cool vintages recently in Australia. Riesling planted the vineyard like 150 years ago or so. Yeah.
That's good. I mean, a new world wine, right? You from Australia, so the wine is Australian. I love the new world wine. I mean, of course, they're getting bigger over time, and I think it's a glass of marketing as well, right? Because wine and marketing go together, right? I mean, I'm from Italy, as you can tell from my British accent, and of course, Italian and French wine have been more famous, through the history, because of the history and everything. But I think the new world wine, like Australian, is very good. And I think, it needs a little bit of advertising as well. So you're probably building some mental availability today, right? On the wine side.
Yeah. Well, the modern Italian wine industry is probably newer, actually, even than the Australian industry. I mean, it goes back a long way, but, the actual quality modern wine industry is more
and also like wine now is becoming an asset, right? It's also an asset, like some people buy bottles not like to drink it, but like as an investment. So it's more like also the industry is changing a lot as well. Anyway, Byron, thank you so much for accepting the invite. So would you please introduce yourself? I usually leave the responsibility to the guests, so I can make mistakes.
Okay. Okay. Hi, I'm Byron Sharp. I'm an Australian professor who is known for leading the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute, which is by far the world's largest academic institute for studying marketing. So we study buying and selling and consumer behavior and that fundamental question of why do some brands sell so much more than others. And you may know me, actually, I've got a copy here of me from this book, How Brands Grow, and the other books from the Institute.
So probably the main point here is why your book, How Brands Grow, got this big, right? Probably because you had some controversial ideas that had been proved right? So you kind of challenge the idea of brand loyalty, of differentiation. Can you kind of develop it a little bit, like the concept of mental availability, physical availability, how brands grow, and why people are not loyal?
Okay, that's a lot. Look, the book has had a big impact, I think, because it introduced scientific laws to readers, and that's pretty. It's pretty amazing for a lot of people to realize there are scientific laws, and the thing is, the book is. Deliberately presents those scientific laws in a way that anyone can see the data, and if you don't believe it, you can go do a simple survey, or if you've got access to Nielsen or Kantar or something data, you can check everything. And that's pretty unusual in marketing, right? You get all these proprietary studies that make these big claims, and it's amazing how many marketers just fall for this stuff. And yet, the data is hidden. There's some bizarro statistical model that is very unscientific. You can't actually check. So How Brands Grow presents stuff that you can look and it's very trustworthy. And it's very, the real world, I always love to say, is most scientific discoveries are pretty odd, right? Our intuitive understanding of the way the world works is just not very good. And so, like so many other scientific discoveries, it presented things that were quite surprising, shocking even to marketers. And so, but you can't really deny them, and no, I mean, no one really denies the things that are in our brands great, because they can go and check themselves, and you can see it. The patterns are there. So by scientific laws, we mean things that can just keep repeating under all sorts of different conditions. In the same way that, did you say you're from Milan? No one asks what's the difference in gravity in Milan compared to, say, Australian gravity. It's like it's known, right? And it's the same laws, like the famous double jeopardy law, that bigger brands have in any time period a lot more customers than a small brand, but that the loyalty doesn't vary very much. Is it's fundamental. It's that we see this just everywhere. You don't have to go, oh, but well, there'll still be some people who go, I'm sure my brand's different. It's like, well, you go and get some data.
Think they kind of grew us up, teaching us, brands grow by focusing on loyalty, by, differentiating yourself from competitors. But you actually said something different. You said, look, brands are not that special. People are not like that loyal. People want to find shortcuts because they're lazy, right? So you need to build the mental availability, because people need to think of you when thinking about the category. So let's say tea. People want to think of Lipton when thinking about a cup of tea, but then of course they need to find the product in store when they're gonna buy it. Otherwise, they're gonna buy the competitor, which is the physical availability. And I think it's pretty interesting, because I think if we get back to the digital marketing world, is the never-ending battle between long-term and short-term growth as well, right? Like, how do you build a brand? How do you grow the brand? But at the same time, how do you monetize it in the short term, right? And I think it's very interesting when you talk about loyalty.
Yeah, look, this is really very confused thinking. This whole short-term, long-term nonsense.
What do you think about the long and short? Like, why is confusing?
Because it suggests that there's some stuff that we do that somehow is not working today, that somehow sort of works magically in the future, like a time bomb or something. And then there's also this idea that the short-term stuff that we do lots of that, and then that will somehow magically add up in the long term. And no, what we're talking about is physical availability, being here today, doing a really good job of that, so that we capture as many people as possible who are buying today. Fine, do a very good job of that. But you've also, but the reach of that is so tiny, and you've got to have mental availability as well. And so they're very different things. Of like, being easy to buy is very different from being easy to think, to be thought of and known, and know what you actually do. And so rather than these mystical ideas of short-term versus long-term, we have to think of mental availability and physical availability, and we've got to do both every day. It's not an optional thing of, well, I think I'm going to go broke, so I'll, or I don't know. I somehow think it's more efficient if I just concentrate on lots of short-term things. As well, it'll add up to the long-term. No, it isn't.
Yeah, I think the confusion comes as well, like today in the digital marketing world, we always split the two, like performance marketing, which is actually driving, clicks, is actually driving, performance, short-term performance, where, long-term growth is like building brand awareness. But I think they go together as well, right? Because while I'm driving clicks to a website, while I'm driving like views, I'm also like driving awareness. So I think they go together. It's the same thing with physical availability.
No, sorry, no. Okay. They are different because they differ massively in reach. So it's like that analogy, which is used lots in digital, right, is like saying, if I only use a sales team and I just arrange the things on shelf really well and I just use price promotions, that's all, I can reach everyone. Well, no, you can't actually. Most people will just go past you. They will not see you. They will not know. You have to have mental and physical availability, and use different things to do them. So you can spend as much as you want on search terms and things, but that won't build mental availability. It's like shelf space. So no, you need to do both, but most of the things that achieve one are not the same things that achieve the other thing. If you maximize for clicks, you yeah, I mean, you just get your dashboard right for anything using any social media or anything. If you maximize for clicks, you'll get miserable reach. The algorithm will just chase the same people over and over, or actually it'll skew heavily to bots and things.
So you're saying reach everyone and then make sure they can find you,
Yes.
but two different objectives.
Yeah, they're two different things, and you'll have different levers for each, and you judge them differently, but you have to do both.
So why people are not loyal to brands? And then what's the
Well, they
meaning
are.
of brand equity? Yeah,
They are.
Okay.
They are. It's amazing. I mean, loyalty is everywhere. Every single category that we look at, people don't buy all the categories. They don't randomly buy. It was Frank Bass who said, that Bass from Ehrenberg-Bass, a famous American professor, he said if an intelligent alien came down from outer space and was told, that there are all these brands competing, but there's not, in most cases, not very much difference between them, and not even very much price difference. Like, that can't explain why some are, would be, what would the alien predict? And the alien would predict, well, all the brands will have the same share. And that's not true. We don't see that at all, right? So no, we definitely see loyalty. We definitely see preferences, but they're not the fall in love type preference, or I'm banking with this bank because I think this bank is the best bank in the country. This is the bank. This is the absolute best bank for me. I'll never change this bank in my life because this is the best. No, we go, yeah, this bank's good. I know of it. I wouldn't have chosen a bank that I didn't know of. And yeah, it's very convenient for me. And so marketing science brings us to a much more prosaic, but it's quite an interesting world for marketers, right? We're in a constant battle for mental and physical availability. That is a profound, yes, you're right, it is a profound shift in reasoning, in thinking. So it's not that there's no loyalty, it's rather there is loyalty.
But it's not that important.
Yeah, you get your amount of loyalty, right? It's like your problem is not that you don't get enough loyalty from your customers. Your problem is that you don't have enough customers.
Yeah, so you're saying, and also like over time, those loyal people might want to try something else, so they might switch. So
Well,
you're losing them, right?
yeah, I mean, all brands lose customers, even growing brands, and the loyalty that we get is quite polygamous. People don't randomly buy brands; they don't buy all the brands, but they're not solely they buy multiple brands.
What about like I mean, of course, a broad reach, right? But then in the hyper personalized landscape of marketing today, don't you think we can leverage the personalization on that? So like I can actually target the people I want. I mean, because I think there is a constraint there, which is budget, right? If I'm a small brand and I can afford to reach everyone, so let's
Well,
say
that's
I just started, yeah.
that's true of all brands, right? So, but you try to reach as many as you can, unless you want to shrink. But the second thing you said about hyper personalization that we can really do, like we can't. We can't. That is a complete myth, right? Do you see anything in your life where you get hyper personalized, where there's a marketer who's able to do something that is distinctly
I mean,
perfectly
I
for
see
you?
brands. I see brands kind of personalizing the message or like
Where?
focusing on a niche, right? So, for example,
Right, a
if
bit of target market. Yeah, yeah. But that restricts their reach and tends to make them smaller brands. But personalization, we've always had some personalization in marketing, but it tends to happen at point of sale where people say things like, well, do you want fries with that order? Do you want it delivered? How do you want to pay? We do that sort of personalization, but I'm amazed at how many marketers fall for this, like, oh yeah, in this digital age, we can do hyper personalization. It's like, really? Can you? Show me. How?
I mean, I think today differently from yesterday because of the paid
Not
media
Not really.
landscape.
Not
You can
really.
be
Have you
more
bought, have you,
personalized.
seriously, have you bought any digital media and seen what sort of targeting you can get? Have you tested it? You can't.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
can't.
you can personalize like audiences, the message based on each person looking at the channel.
You can't. But the only thing you can do is retargeting, where you go, well, someone who came into our website, we can keep following them or something. But that gets very expensive, and you end up paying a lot just to reach people who were going to buy anyway. But no, our ability to actually do targeting is probably about at the same level it has been for decades, right? We've been able to target geographically is probably the most important way. We've been able to develop products that are more and less expensive, and they will appeal to different people. But our ability to no, it's not. It has not improved dramatically.
I mean, probably,
I go on social media. I get it. Speaking of which, I mean, maybe it's because I'm actually interested in wine, but I get served ads for things like pesticides in vineyards, and I'm like, I don't own a vineyard. This is nuts.
no, I mean, 100% because of, the iOS updates and everything else. It's much
But
harder to target today,
it's always,
probably in some ways.
I always use
But
Amazon as
we
a
have
real.
more power as marketers today than yesterday, right? I mean,
We have
considering,
some new
let's think
tools.
about the shelf, right? Like, for example, if we talk about the digital shelf, let's say, like online grocery shopping, you can deliver a more personalized, shelf because everyone is seeing a different shelf based on their data, on their, what they've been purchasing. So eventually, if you're going to buy,
That
I don't know,
sounds good, but
wine,
let's have a look at Amazon, right? Because they've been at this the longest. They're probably,
yeah,
they are the pioneers, and look at their algorithms and what they recommend. It's rubbish, right? When they say that you've bought this, so you should buy that. It's rubbish, right? It's really bad, and they're probably the best. They tell me I should buy How Brands Grow, which is actually, I've got it
that makes
all.
sense.
I've got a author page. Their computer should know. This guy he's the person who wrote the book. No, they have no capacity to do that. But look, this doesn't matter. But we do have some. Yeah, interesting new tools. We have some new media, but not that that's really a new phenomenon. If you'd interviewed marketers 40 years ago, they would have been talking about new media. Right? Every decade, marketers have had new media. So that really isn't that amazing. But we do have some nice new tools, and some of them have become really big reach. I mean, YouTube is probably the world's first global advertising supported TV station. That's
Yeah, exactly. And
pretty cool.
if you compare YouTube and television, which probably it's easier to compare those two, right? You can tell that like as an advertiser on YouTube, you have more power, right? Because you can actually retarget people based on what they've been watching. You can actually target certain channel. You can actually, kind of reach everyone in some ways, but like in a more personalized way as well, which is more powerful.
Well, maybe no. We need to research that whether the personalization pays off much. So far, research shows not so much.
But what about the emotional connections? Do you think it's important, or is just about mental availability? So I'm consistent, I'm there. Physical availability, consistent, I'm there, and is not really about emotions. So is there space for love
Well,
in marketing, or is this?
well, everything we do is emotional and rational, and probably the biggest thing is that we have to be humble in marketing and recognize that people aren't going to listen to our communication much, right? They're going to glance up, see the digital ad, glance away. We're going to get fleeting exposures. So emotional content is faster to process. Right? It's more simple than rational messages. But the idea that we can build some sort of emotional connection with the consumers through things like advertising and make them think differently, have a different perception of our brand, or fall in love with our brand, that needs more research. And so far, the evidence is pretty. I was reading an article yesterday which we're going to do replication research in the institute. And the author, a very famous advertising researcher, just said basically, this shows there's no real evidence that advertising can be used to build an emotional connection. It's like, wow, I thought that would shock a lot of people in the UK, particularly. It's felt that like you have famous department stores like this time of year you have this sort of little war, don't you, between your department stores and things to run the most heart tugging, Christmas ad. And the question is that, are those ads, the better ones, working better because they're just more entertaining, or do they actually make people have a feeling about the store? It's different. And that latter thing is, well, put it this way, the evidence so far is not very good. I mean, it suggests that, people don't terribly.
So you're saying the emotions are just good in terms of entertainment, because people can kind of fall in love in that way, like they pay more attention to emotions.
Yeah, that they
So
go, oh, I like this. Yeah, I like this ad. I'll watch it more. Or just that I'll process it faster. It's easier to understand. I don't think that's terribly controversial. Does it make them feel better about the store, and therefore that's a driver for why they might do more of their Christmas shopping there? That's something that we really need to do a bit more research on, because I think we we like the idea. So
what about sustainable product? Do you think people really care that your product is sustainable? So I'm gonna buy it because of that. Is he playing a role, like, or they don't really, have emotions about that? It's just
not much, no.
grab my attention because I think I care about sustainability, so I buy it.
No, all the evidence is pretty damning on that. Yes, people care about the world, but they don't even know which brands are the sort of more sustainable ones, and even then they don't. It's not a super driving factor for them. It's only when they're interviewed by a market researcher do they tend to say that, because we all like to think we're nice people, but the real world gets in the way, and so they look at things like price and features and why did you buy that one? Well, it was there,
No, and I really like your approach, because like a few months ago I came up with this presentation. It's called the Digital Maids. And you are in the presentation, so I will send it to you.
Okay.
And essentially, I define today customer journey as a maze, because there is so much information and people get lost. So it's a maze, and the job as a marketing manager is to get people out of the maze, right? And I come up with like 3 keys to get people out of the maze, which is always on campaigns, because you want to be always on. Make sure that people, have this mental availability, so they can always think of you. Then having an omni-channel approach, which is not like being a multi-channel, because sometimes you can afford to be everywhere, but like be on your optimum channel, be on the right channel. And then have a full funnel strategy, which means that, yes, build the mental availability, but then also make sure that you build the physical availability. Because as you said, I can always say, look, I'm the best, I'm here. Think of me when thinking about the category. But then, as you said, it's less romantic than we think. If people go to the supermarket and they want to buy me, then they need to find me, right? And all of this with a consistent messaging. Because like I always give the Red Bull example. What I really like about Red Bull is that they've been repeating the same message for years. So different cultures, different countries, everyone knows that Red Bull gives you wings. Then of course they personalize it based on the environment.
They do lovely, interesting.
Like for students,
they say the same thing but in an interesting way. Yes.
And I really like this approach, because I feel like I think today we have these tools that allow us, as you said, to personalize the message, the hyper-personalization. But sometimes personalizing too much gets people lost as well, because changing the message every hour, changing the message, per each audience, country, gets people lost. So I really like this approach of being very analytical, if you know what I mean. Like very like, let's reach everyone and then make sure they can find us.
Well, one of the great discoveries of marketing science is the ratios between heavy to light buyers, and showing that most are incredibly light and very infrequent. So the most typical Red Bull buyer is someone who buys them like once every 2 years. So you don't need to say much new, but you do need to say something interesting. You need to get their attention, and just say, hi, we're still here. Yeah, you need to reach a lot of people, and you need to be consistent, because if you keep changing things, they'll forget about you or won't see you. So mental availability is not about being like first to mind. It's just that you do come to mind sometimes. People have multiple brands. I mean, how many soft drink brands do you know?
A few. Yes.
Yeah, more than a few. Yeah. How many do you buy?
Yeah.
More than a few.
Yeah, no. So I get your point when you say it's good to be loyal, but in the long run, you are not loyal. Probably it's not even the human nature, right?
Yeah. Well, polygamous loyalty, as we put it, seems to be the fundamental. All humans seem to. It's like they don't buy all the brands, but they don't just buy one brand. My colleague John Dawes did a lovely analysis on, particularly looking at Nike, because in America, Americans in particularly think Nike is this sort of, or American marketers, sorry, think that Nike is the sort of brand that consumers like fall in love with and are hyper loyal and things. And he showed that no. You only have to look in someone's wardrobe, right? And you go, oh, wow, yeah, nice Nikes there. And that's a nice jacket there from, oh, that's Fila. Oh, that's Adidas. And, oh, what's that other pair of shoes? Oh, that's New Balance. All right. Yeah. You got quite a few brands there. Yeah.
What about luxury brands? Because
It's the same thing, right?
I believe.
Is there anyone on this planet who like only buy, who's a luxury buyer and only buy Gucci?
No, but I'm saying they, like, for example, let's think about the luxury watch world, right? They are hard to find. I mean, the mental availability is there. I mean, of course, they've been advertising. You know them. You know they exist. You know everything. But then they are hard to find. So the physical availability. How do you see the physical availability in there? Like, because they are hard to find. They can be limited edition. It's not easy to get.
There's a lot of luxury brands in the world, and most of them have really low mental availability, and they don't sell very much. The main thing that makes a luxury brand hard to get is the price tag. But if you want to buy a nice watch, it's not hard to go buy a nice watch, right? It's not hard to find a luxury.
I mean, there are watches. There are many watches right now where it's not just about the money, but it's all about if you can find it. So they added the extra layer of of a challenge, which is if you have enough money to buy a Rolex, you can buy it. You need to be on a waiting list. You might, if you want a certain model, there is this game essentially that brands are using to
and there's this dumb
make,
idea. There's this idea in marketing that somehow that makes them that is essential to do and it makes them more appealing. No, it doesn't. It makes them smaller. But let's get real. If you've got the money and you want to buy a Rolex, it is not hard to buy a Rolex. They compete like other brands. They compete for mental and physical availability, and they don't sell that much because most people don't want to spend €15,000 on a watch.
So if you were like a luxury brand like this, right? Would you let everyone buy it if they have the budget, or would you play the strategy where you can buy me? Like you need to be on a waiting list. It's the same thing for Ferrari. Like if you have the money tomorrow, you can't really buy Ferrari. You need to be on a waiting list. They need to do some, checks.
No, it's not a clever strategy, and it's not usually a marketing strategy. To be honest, most of the time this comes about because the company actually has massively limited production. Apple used to have this problem, and they worked really hard to get rid of it. Remember when they'd launch a new model and there were, queues and things like that? They worked really hard to get rid of that problem. And that's why they're one of the most valuable companies in the world.
Because you want to be accessible. Everyone can buy it.
From, you want to learn from a car company that makes 6,000 cars a year. It sells 6,000 cars a year. Yeah.
I mean, in a world where everyone wants to feel unique, I can have a car that you can have not because of the money, but because I'm in that list.
Look, let's face it, most of the scarcity for luxury brands is done because of the price. And it's exactly the same, Domaine Romani Conti, like most expensive wine in the world. You can still pretty much buy it. It's not hard to get Domaine Romani Conti if you've got the money. If you want to pay $15,000 for, not a case, a bottle, a single bottle.
Yeah, because it's a limited quantity, so of course they increase the price. But yeah, you're saying it's just Ferrari probably, they decide to don't increase the production, so they would rather sell less. So it's more like a business strategy than a marketing
business thing to be small. Now, most people do not work for businesses that say, most marketers do not work. I mean, they don't need marketers then if they can sell every car 3 times over. Most marketers do not work for that. And I don't know why marketers would think that that's a clever strategy. Make it hard for people to buy for us. It's funny.
What about cross-selling and upselling? What's your take
What's
on
the
that?
evidence on that? The evidence is really hard. It seems to be really, really, really difficult to get more out of your existing customers. Not impossible, but really hard, really expensive. Yeah, it's easier to get more customers. Increase your mental and physical availability, and your existing customers will buy a bit more. That's the double jeopardy law. Right? I mean, you will get more loyalty from your existing customers, but only if you increase penetration and get lots more customers, which means only if you increase mental and physical availability a lot more. If you want a simple analogy to understand this, imagine you have stores in the south. Right? So who do you sell to? Well, you sell to largely people in the south, but you occasionally sell to people in the north, when they come south. What happens if you open a store in the north? Well, you suddenly get a big, you sell to lots more customers because now the people in the north can buy you. And they can buy, but also the people in the south can buy you now when they're in the north. So you get a little bit more loyalty from your existing customers. But the main thing you get is a lot more customers. And that simple analogy describes how brands compete.
I think it's pretty clear when we look at the wine industry, for example. I'm picking a random industry only because the YouTube channel is called A Glass of Cheers, by the way. Yeah. And
it's very early for you can build. I should point out to all the viewers, all the listeners, it's dinner time for me. It's not for you.
You didn't have to say that. Now you make me look like an alcoholic on the channel. If we look at the wine industry, right? I think it's pretty interesting to see that you can build like mental availability, like saying, "Oh, this is my wine," right? Like Joe wine. But then you need to be able to find it. And I was having the episode with people working in the wine industry, and of course they were like, "It's all about the distribution," because I can. Build the mental availability in the United States about my wine, but then if people can't find it in store, there is no point there, right? So for certain products like wine, physical availability is everything.
You have to have both. A typical wine store, I mean, wine is a weird category. Well, it's like cosmetics or books or maybe hardware. In that you go into a store and whoa, you have so many brands to choose from. So yes, physical availability, being able to be purchased is absolutely vital, but you must have mental as well. Otherwise you're just so easy not to be seen on shelf. And an awful lot of wine brands are very poor at building mental availability. They spend their money on sales reps, they get into a store, and then they just, hope and pray that the store will somehow do some selling for them and point people towards their wine. Yeah. So that's why,
I think for the wine industry,
the great brands.
I think for the wine industry, it's easy to see why, though, because if we think about it, there must be some products where people are more loyal, right? They fall in love a little bit more. In the long run, they are not loyal. I agree with you. But in the short term, people might fall in love a little bit, faster and with more intensity. And wine in my opinion, is not one of these, industries, because you want to try also different bottles, right? So you might fall in love with a grape, you might have your favorite vineyard, but at the end of the day, it's more about exploring different, solutions, if you want, right?
Well, yeah, some people aren't. Some people are incredibly habitual. Uh, but some people aren't really in. Some people like wine, but they don't want to learn about it. So they just, you know, they know they like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, and that's what they drink every time. Uh, so, if you're a wine marketer, the biggest problem is not that the consumer behavior is fundamentally different or anything. It's just that you have so many brands that you are competing against. There's some incredible statistics, like something like every 4.5 minutes a new winery opens in Australia. Wow, that's tough. So you see very few regions have been able to even build brands, let alone individual brands. Champagne, I think, is the
Yeah.
greatest marketing success story in the wine industry because let's be blunt, it's a pretty marginal area to grow grapes. You can barely get them ripe. They had to work out a way to sort of turn this pretty unpalatable wine into something you could drink, right? Which was the method champenoise, the sparkling of it, right? So they worked out this is great, right? It was a great technological thing to make this, but still, you had problem. If they had it was expensive to do, and bottles could explode. And you're thinking all these disadvantages. But they worked so hard to build mental and physical availability, and they absolutely went for broad reach, right? And today, almost you can go to an outback pub in Australia where they
You can
mainly
find
sell
champagne.
beer, but if they've got a little bit of wine, you'll be able to buy a bottle of champagne. Wow, that's incredible, right? You go to Tokyo, you go to Buenos Aires, it doesn't matter. You can get champagne everywhere from this tiny little French region. That's pretty impressive,
I mean,
Mark.
they've been doing it for many, many years. Like the
Yes.
advertising they've
Yes.
been doing, right?
Yeah.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's about building the mental availability, but then of course you need to be able to find it.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're gonna drink something else. And
Prosecco
I
or something.
and
Yeah.
I and I can imagine in some places in the world people might be drinking prosecco and call it champagne. You know what I mean? Because the
Mm.
mental availability is even bigger than the
Yeah.
physical availability, right?
It's yeah. So you know that's the absolute benchmark of quality marketing and long-term brand building.
What about creativity? What's your take on the importance of creativity? Because, like, my point of view on creativity, I give you my point of view first, so then you can agree or disagree with me.
Okay.
I think in a world where today everyone can advertise, so I think there is more competition. I think creativity helps you kind of stand out a bit more. So I think we are in a world where we're fighting for attention, and creativity is what really makes us win among the others, because everything looks a little bit more standardized today. AI will probably make it even more. So I believe like storytelling, it's key. But what's your take on that? Are we giving too much importance to storytelling and creativity?
Maybe because we just assume that it's something that I like stories, so stories will work better. We don't know a lot about what is great creativity, but from as an advertising perspective, but we do know that some ads work so much better than others. So there is this magic about getting the creative right. It really has a huge effect when we get it right. I'm not sure it's so much a battle for attention because classic is those billboards that that are put up by the people who own the billboards that say something like "unsee this." Yeah, I mean, you see it, right? Because you can't help yourself, particularly if it's a movement, particularly if it's a video. You can't help give it some attention, but creativity great creativity lets us get it, right? That we know which brand it's for, and therefore it lays down refreshes the right memory structures, or lays down new memory structures. So I think that's the beauty of that. That is what in advertising is great creativity, that it really shines that spotlight on the brand, that we get it, that we don't just go, yeah, it's an advertisement,
Yeah.
or
Oh,
hey,
it's a way to grab attention. Yeah.
yeah,
But then you
hey,
need to
it's a
be there
pretty
as well.
cat, yay, good.
No, it's a good point. And then like any advice to marketers, like summing up all the theories and everything you've been studying. If like I have my podcast, right? I wanna promote my podcast, make sure
Right.
people.
Okay.
I wanna get famous tomorrow with my YouTube channel. What's your advice? How would you do it? Would you focus on of people that are like interested in marketing, like marketing students, marketing professionals? Would you maximize your reach there, or would you reach everyone? I mean, of course, with my budget constraint, but eventually I will have more money over time because I will become more famous. Will you reach everyone? Because then eventually even people that are not interested in marketing today, they might be interested in marketing tomorrow, and they're gonna, follow me.
Yeah, so certainly the most important decision you make is not about any sort of hyper targeting. You should know who your potential audience is, but then you try to think, okay, but how do I reach these brains? So that should just be a thing you're thinking every single day. How do I get more reach? How do I reach some new people? I'll do that more. I'll get better if I can say something interesting. What could I do that's interesting? What could I, what's the chance it would give me some publicity? Because if you, like most of us, we don't have limitless, we don't have large budgets even. Let's forget about it. We all have limited budgets, right? But we just don't. Let's be honest. We just have a small budget. No one has the budget they want to do. So time is our friend. We have to recognize it's going to take time. But every single day, we should be thinking, how do I reach some people that I didn't reach last week? Yeah? How do I reach some new people? How do I go further? How do I stop talking to the same people? Because that's the only way that you will build your fame, make your business valuable, make it big.
It's a great point. I really agree on reaching as many people as possible with a podcast, for example, because then, among all of these people, you have more probability to find, the people that are interested in what you do than not like trying to just target over time always the same segment, because they might end up not even loving you. They might just hate you because they see you too much, right? So I you know what I mean? I think you need to find that balance as well.
A good rule of thumb. A good rule of thumb is to always think. Probably 99% of the people who are in my market don't
care.
don't know me. Don't think, or if they do, they think of me once every 3 years. And so just always remember that, and that will keep you on track, I think, for marketing.
What's the right frequency? Do you have a number? Like, what's the right frequency that people should see you? I don't know, how many times per week or per month in order to...
Well, you buy as much frequency as you can afford, but frequency is not your friend. Every media will give you frequency is easy, right? You always get frequency. Reach is hard. So never plan for frequency. You'll get it.
Okay.
You'll get it.
Okay.
Will you get reach? Well, that's the creative, tricky thing.
That's a good point. And then moving into more like the educational side, because like my second job, I'm actually your colleague. I mean, I try to say your colleague. Hi. I teach at university as well. I teach in Milan digital marketing.
Yes.
And I've been teaching for like 3-4 years now, so pretty new. But since AI came, I already noticed a huge, impact. And how it changed the way people are studying, learning, right?
Writing their assignments. Yes.
And the research. Yes. So I had a few questions about this. Probably the first one is, do you think students today need new skills than yesterday? What's the difference in the skill set that students need to have today in 2024 than, I don't know, 10 years ago?
That's a good question. I was going to say my natural thing was to say nothing really. I mean, that's the same things as before. But no, I'm going to. I think AI has a lot of bright students. Sort of by the time they were about 13, 14, it sort of mastered the standard essay thing, right? And these were the students who distinguished themselves. These are the A students they distinguished themselves from the others, and that they could pretty much craft a sensible essay saying, well, on this hand is this and this, and here's the summary. That skill is now available to sort of everyone because AI will do that for you. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, really, because it now pushes students to actually go beyond that. So in future, I think we're going to need, students are going to need much more a higher level of sort of scientific skills of being open-minded but skeptical and being able to to use AI to do the sort of grunt work, but to really switch their brains on. Yeah, suddenly the A students will find they can't just sort of, it's not easy to distinguish themselves from the other students. The other students have all got this leg up now. They can produce an essay that looks, quite like the A essay. So the whole students are thinking it's great at the moment, right? Particularly because they can get AI to write an assignment and soon.
But then what makes a great assignment? So if we're talking about essays, right? So you're saying, of course, now everyone has the hard skill to be good at writing. So success today is not who is best at writing, but probably is about who has the best bigger picture, idea, point of view, right?
Or being able to do much more analytical, much more, the stuff that scientists do. Yes, so it is going to elevate everything, I think. And in marketing, it means we'll be teaching much more application things where we ask people to work something out and doing, far less sort of basic essay work, that is a good thing, actually. It means marketers will have to teach much more factual, descriptive things about the real world.
It's a great point. I mean, my teaching method is very practical. So what I do, I get into the class and I give my students actually a real brief. So for example, I explain what media plan is, right? But then I give them a brief, and then I ask them plan a campaign.
Yes.
Plan a full funnel campaign with real insights.
Yes.
And it's very interesting.
Application questions that require you to have a deep knowledge, but you have to defend something that.
I think about it.
You can use AI to help you a bit, but no, it won't.
Because you still need to drive there, right? So what I usually do, for example, in my media planning class, 80% of the class is about this is how you media plan. Now show me how you do the media plan, the old school way. And then the last 20% of the time, then I'm like, okay, now you can use ChatGPT, use AI to help you do that. And they realize that if you already know how to do it, then AI can actually improve your capabilities. You have better speed. You can be more accurate in many ways, but you still need to know how to do it. Because if you just ask AI, oh, can you plan this campaign? It's not gonna do it, right? You need to be a driver, and in order to, I always, it's like with driving cars, right? You can go with the manual gear and the automatic, but if you come with the manual and you have a little bit of knowledge how it works, I think it's easier to do it as well.
The other day, I asked a fairly advanced AI, to tell me about marketing's double jeopardy law, and it did a beautiful description of the law, better than most students would do. But then it went on to say, and this is what it means for marketing practice, and that was awful. And I thought, okay,
don't you think the new skill is
creative thinking to think about what it means for practice? It could not do that.
Don't you think the new skill is actually being able to go through a lot of information and understand what's right, what's wrong, right?
Yes.
Because there is so much information right now. You need to be able to find patterns across different information and build your own way. So it feels like today we are like more like art directors in some ways. We need to look at the bigger picture and understand where you want to go with all the tools you have, because it's very easy to get lost.
Yeah, like
as well in some ways.
It's important to know very fundamental things, like I cannot have that sales growth unless I increase my penetration. Okay, that is terribly important to know. But then how I do that there's a million different ways you can do that. It depends on all sorts of circumstances. So that's where sort of creativity and things comes in. I don't think AI is going to help you much there. Large language models aren't going to help you very much in that.
What about the academic research? I mean, AI had a huge impact, I guess, right? So if you want to write a paper today compared to 5 years ago, how faster can you be? How different it is?
Well, so far, it's mainly helping us do things like write code and things. That's what it's pretty good at. I haven't in my institute seen anyone really using AI to help them write journal articles, but I can certainly see a day. In fact, I can see a day when journal articles just disappear. Right? Why should academics waste so much time writing journal articles? Instead, they'll be interviewed by the AI who'll say, so what did you do? What did you do with this experiment? And how did you do it? And can I see your data? And it'll interrogate you to the point where it's got a really good understanding of what you did and what you found. And then it'll just build that into its AI. And so if anyone asks about that, we don't need to have it's a pretty weird system, right? That if you want to know something about that, at the moment, Google Scholar or something will say, well, here's 67 articles you can read. They're all a bit different. They're all a bit hard to understand. And you got to sort of figure it out. I think in the future, you'll be able to you'll just ask some AI, like in the same way that doctors will be asking the AI to, and it will have all the medical, it'll know about all the latest experiments that have been done.
It's interesting how then it's more about the evidence you have and less about the story, if you want, like around the paper.
Yes.
Right? Because at the end of the day, you can write it with ChatGPT, you can write a paper in 10 minutes. If you have the outline, you can write everything, right? The only thing that you're missing is actually the data. How did you prove this, right?
Yeah.
And then it's all about the experiment, right? So
yeah, so humans thinking up interesting things to research will not go away, and doing that research, well, I can help them, but that will still need to be done. But yeah, the writing up of the articles and the reading of articles, I think that can all be just done by that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then usually at the end of my YouTube channel, we usually go through personal growth as well. And what I usually ask people is, I mean, you must be very busy, right? You have so many podcasts and so many articles. You must have your students as well. How do you find your work-life balance? How do you balance?
I'm a person who needs a certain amount of exercise. I have to have some exercise every day, so that's quite good because I live about 3 kilometers away from the university, and which is enough to walk. So I can walk in and to the uni and back every day. So I'm guaranteed a certain amount of time outdoors. Adelaide's a very, very beautiful city. If I want to, I can detour a little bit and go through the Botanic Gardens. So that's a lovely thing. And you have other interests and things like I have a wine cellar. I live in a great wine capital of the world. It's a nice hobby to have.
Nice. Any advice to marketing students or like to students in general?
It's a wonderful. I mean, marketing is a wonderful. Particularly if you're interested in what makes the world tick, right? So say you're thinking of being something like, you like that sort of scientific perspective. Well, marketing is pretty cool because it's a huge part of the world. It's a very important part of the world. It's made the world wealthier, healthier, more peaceful. So you do good. But if you're intuitive, if you're interested in the world, interested in like why do people buy that, why does that sell more? Yeah, it's great because you are actually in that world. I sort of feel a bit sorry for people who study like, I don't know, astrophysics or something. And they just have to.
Why?
Their data source comes from some radio telescope, something. It's like, well, that's not so much fun, Whereas a marketing student can just walk into a supermarket and there's their world.
Because we are like data-driven psychologists.
Yeah, and sociologists and geographers and yeah, but we are in the world that we study, that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, what I really find interesting about marketing is that marketing is everywhere. Like when you're trying to make a new friend, you know what I mean? Or find a new wife, girlfriend, or anything, right?
Yep.
It's like the way, you know, you need to approach someone. You personalize your communication, you know, in order to be perceived in some ways.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And this is why I fell in love with this job. And of course, some days can be more analytical, some days can be less analytical. But I agree with you. It always gets to the point where it's all about understanding people, why they're making a decision, and sometimes, you know, it's less complicated than we think, as you proved, right? It's
yeah, all sorts of things. But you know, remember the Scottish writer Louis Stevenson, who did Treasure Island and things. You know, he has this great quote. You know, everyone lives by selling something.
That's true, right?
The economy is just
You
people
need to
doing
sell
things
your
for other
ideas,
people,
yeah.
right? We all do stuff for other people, and they do things for us, and that's wonderful.
It's also about you need to sell ideas, because until you don't communicate something, it doesn't exist. Like you can write the best book in the world, right? But then you need to actually share it with the others, promote it, challenge it, right? And it's all about putting it out there, out loud, and make sure people talk about it, right? It's all about the reach.
Yeah.
And then last but not least,
most books, I think, well, there's some of the quote, you know, 99% of the books that are published this year will never be reprinted. They'll have one print run ever.
You know, it's interesting
whereas
how
like Treasure Island, I'm sure is still being printed.
No, but I totally agree. For example, with academic university, I think that needs more marketing. I really like the work you guys doing, like actually promoting your work, talking about it, because I think it's a great way to drive a discussion, but also like kind of bring visibility. Because I think what I've noticed, and I live in the middle, right? Because I work in a corporate, but then I also work at university. And what I've noticed is that sometimes universities are not very good in marketing. You know, sometimes they write their own work and they keep it for themselves. You know, sometimes they're kind of jealous about it. Where I think it's all about sharing, right, and talking about it.
Yeah, a lot are in a bubble. I mean, a lot just write to impress their friends. So the researchers in the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute want to do things that they want to do studies that actually would be useful to people. And then when they've done those, of course, they want lots of people to know about them. That's probably the fundamental difference.
And solving like problems, that challenges that, companies have. But then talking about it, showing data, I think the data-driven approach is key, because then a lot of people can talk about, I believe this, I think about this, but then what data says? At the end of the day, it's all about data. And I really like your approach when you're like, look, this is not what I think, it's what data is saying, right? And people don't care about what I think. People care about science.
Science is not about theories. It's about, does this predict the real world? Does it fit with the real world? And if it doesn't, well, I don't care how beautiful your theory is. It's wrong.
Byron, last question. What's your definition of success? Because for some people, success is, trying every wine in the world. For other people is, just becoming billionaires. For other people is writing books. What's your personal definition of success?
Well, as humans, we like to have a purpose, right? We like to go, what's this all for? Why am I here? And I think the answer to that, I think for humans, you look at human civilization and it's pretty amazing. And so, the purpose of our life is to make some contribution to that. And there's 7 billion of us, right? We don't all have to win Nobel Prizes or discover nuclear fusion and things. For a lot of us, our major contribution is that we have some children and we bring them up well, right, so that they can contribute. You make a small contribution, but you should all. But that is, I think, the secret of saying, I had a life that was useful. I did some good things I made the world a little bit of a better place.
And I mean, as a professor, I think you do this every day. My favorite part of this job is you actually, even if in a minimal part, you can contribute to someone else's life and improve it a bit. I really have a lot of respect. I usually say the most important jobs, or at least two of the most important, are like doctors and professors, because they can save your life, or they can ruin it, right? So, but yeah, Byron, thank you so much for accepting the invite. That was great. That was an honor. Thank you for sharing this glass with me.
Thank you. I'm going to cook my dinner.